In autumn of '99, the weather was warm and beautiful. A light breeze constantly tore yellow and reddish-brown leaves with purple veins from the trees, carelessly scattering them across the ground, forming a lush carpet. Believing it was too early to prepare for future studies, and having failed to find a job, I indulged in blissful idleness. I took long walks, visited friends, and, I'm not ashamed to admit, enjoyed life. While my mom had to feed us, my acquaintance with Professor Yakovlev gave her hope that I would definitely get into college the following year. So, she softened her stance and looked favorably on how I spent my time. In early October, my high school friend, Vadim Kislitsky, called me. After asking how I was, and chatting about trivial things for a minute, he finally got to the point. "Listen, Slavik, I'm calling you because—" He hesitated. "You see, my family and I decided to take a trip out of town for a week. My dad promised me a trip to Egypt if I get in. He made the arrangements and bought the ticket. I sorted everything out at the university and got leave. And then Pavlik's uncle, you know him? He was the loudest one at graduation when I got my diploma, says he can't look after our house. My dad tried to persuade him, but he kept shaking his hands and saying, 'No, I can't. It's just not possible.' Is your neighborhood so dangerous that a house can't be left unattended for a week?" I asked. "Oh, Slavik, you know there are Romani people living next door. My mom really doesn't like them and is a little afraid of them. I wanted to ask you to look after the place. If you want, you can even stay the night. We'll leave food and money, of course. Just do whatever you want, but don't forget to feed the dog. So are you in? Are your Romani neighbors so dumb they'll try to rob you? They won't rob us, but they might give someone some liquor money. So are you in or not? You're just sitting at home all day anyway, not studying." I figured there was some truth to what he said. Living on my own for a week would be nice, so I accepted his offer. When I told my mom, she shrugged and said I should do what I thought was best. A day later, in what felt like a grand ceremony, I took possession of the house. The dean's father watched me intently with a suspicious look. His mother smiled a forced smile. Kislitsky himself seemed happy, as he briefed me on what to feed the dog, which faucet in the bathroom I could use, and other small details. He said goodbye and handed me a small silver key. The dean's father gave me a firm pat on the shoulder, not saying a word, but his eyes conveyed a warning. His mother ruffled my hair and kissed me on the cheek, promising that everything would be fine. I walked them to the gate, closed the door behind them, locked it, turned, and surveyed my new domain. A 3-bedroom house with a separate bathroom, an adjoining cherry orchard whose trees were a sight for sore eyes with their yellow-green foliage. Off to the side of the gate was a doghouse where a large dog named Matilda lay, wagging her tail. The Kislitskys had said she was a gentle German shepherd. My first order of business was to get to know my housemate better. I slowly approached the doghouse, stopping a half-step away. The dog stopped wagging her tail and looked at me intently from under half-closed eyelids. I felt a little uneasy, but I managed to overcome the fear that had begun to creep into my heart. I bent down and reached my hand toward her head, intending to pet her. Everyone says dogs can sense fear. If that's true, Matilda was an exception to the rule. She let me pet her, then stood up and started wagging her tail energetically, trying to curry favor with me. To seal our friendship, I brought her a bowl full of porridge and canned meat. She barked at me joyfully. I brushed her fur and, satisfied with how our acquaintance was going, I went inside the house. The first day passed in a light euphoria. I was the master. I didn't have to report to anyone. I could get up and go wherever I pleased at any moment, and return home whenever I wanted. And no nosy questions. On the morning of the second day, I decided to walk around the neighborhood and plan out the coming week. To avoid being bored, I took Matilda with me. I unclipped her chain, attached a leash, and took her outside to wander around the neighborhood. At first, I tried to stick to the streets, but the forest, located just across the road, was very tempting. "This is convenient," I thought, stopping on the shoulder and letting the passing cars go by. "If I decide to have some friends over, there's no need to bring them inside the house. It's warm right now. We can celebrate in the forest." After we crossed the road, Matilda and I turned onto the first path we saw and disappeared under the tree canopies. It was blindingly beautiful in the forest. The rays of the midday sun illuminated the golden dry leaves in bright streaks. Red and black birds chirped merrily, soaring into the air and flying off into the distance. I tried to follow one of them, lifting my head, but immediately lost sight of it. My gaze became fixed on the narrow gaps in the interlaced branches, through which I could make out the tufts of clouds, calmly sailing across the boundless ocean of the sky. The air smelled pleasant, and in the distance, I could hear the gentle gurgling of a stream, the creaking of old maples, the rustling of leaves carried by the wind, and weeping. I listened closely. It wasn't just crying, but a real wail, like a banshee's cry. I became unnerved. At the same time, I felt a surge of curiosity. Who was crying? Why were they crying? Maybe they needed my help? Without thinking, I pulled the reluctant Matilda deeper into the forest. Soon I came to a ravine. The forest ended here. The noise of passing cars became audible, and a little further on, a half-abandoned cemetery overgrown with dense bushes sprawled out. Wailing was now joined by mournful moans and screams. Matilda became agitated, recoiling and backing up insistently, whimpering pitifully. I wanted to get closer to the cemetery, but the dog resisted. Annoyed, I gave the leash a hard tug, causing Matilda to give a pathetic yelp. However, she stopped bucking. Lowering her head, she trotted along behind me. I stopped at the bushes and peered at the gloomy rows of graves among which stood short rowan trees. Someone was being buried. There was a whole procession. People were swarthy, with black eyes. Some of the men had earrings in their ears, and the women had colorful scarves on their heads. They were Romani. There were so many of them, it was impossible to count. Everyone was weeping and shouting. A real cacophony of sounds. My soul grew heavy, and my heart clenched and stopped beating. It felt so bad. Tears welled up in my eyes, and I wanted to scream out loud. I didn't even know why. With great difficulty, I pushed away the melancholy that had overtaken me, backed up, turned around, and quickly walked back into the forest, to Matilda's delight. Who were they burying? Who were they crying for like that? They must have been an exceptionally good person. I tried not to think about the Romani people, but nothing worked. I kept remembering the mournful screams over and over again. Disturbing images swirled in my head, and I felt uneasy. I'd never heard of a cemetery in this area. That made the funeral a real mystery. If a Romani baron died, why did they decide to bury him in a god-forsaken place? They had bought a plot in the new cemetery. I forgot my intention to relax with friends in the evening. I decided to walk in the forest again, promising myself I wouldn't go to the cemetery, just get some fresh air. But I knew beforehand I wouldn't keep my word. I left the house around 4:30, hoping that by this time they'd be done mourning the deceased, and I could go see who had died. I almost ran through the forest, making my way to the ravine. After making sure there was no one at the cemetery, I crept through the bushes and started wandering among the graves in search of a fresh one. The cemetery was very old. I came across headstones that were 100 years old. Surprisingly, they were well kept. The inscriptions were outlined in chalk, and there were fresh flowers on the slabs. The longer I wandered along the deserted paths, the more plausible the suspicion that had taken root in my soul seemed. No one had been buried in this cemetery for a very long time. So why were the women wailing like that? Why had so many people come? Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed movement, turned my head, and flinched. An old Romani man was walking quickly toward me. His legs weren't bending, his hands were trembling, and his eyes were fiercely boring into me. I didn't know why, but I jumped back a couple of steps. "What do you want?" I asked, trying to hide the tremor in my voice. "Who are you? What are you doing here?" he asked with a strong accent. "Why did you come so late?" The Romani man stopped on the path just a couple of steps away from me. "Why are you silent? Answer me," he demanded. "I was just walking. Is that not allowed?" I replied, a little more calmly. "You don't walk in a cemetery. Now get out of here." I looked at the Romani man. He was short, old, and skinny. Why was I so scared? "I'm not going anywhere. You don't tell me what to do," I snapped, frowning. "How dare you talk to your elders like that?" The Romani man flared up. "Get out of here before something bad happens. Leave me alone," I replied, a little more gently. It really wasn't polite to be rude. After all, his relatives might be buried here. "Am I bothering you?" "I'm just looking at the headstones. I'm not bothering anyone." The old man sighed. His brow smoothed out. He brought his hand to his thick gray hair, lightly tugged on a tuft with his fingers, then smoothed his hair, sighed, and looked at me with a hint of pity. "You heard the crying?" he asked. "Yes," I admitted. "Come on." He nodded his head to the right. "I'll show you." The old man moved confidently in the direction he had indicated. I obeyed and trotted along behind him. The cracked asphalt path quickly ended. We were standing by a beautiful black marble grave. On the large headstone, a series of squiggles stretched out in a white scratch. Below them was a date, either of birth or death. 1987. "This is where they were crying," the Romani man said. I was surprised. "The grave is old. The person has been dead for a long time. So why are they still mourning him?" "We cry over him every year," the Romani man continued, "just so he won't be angry with us." I had lost the thread of what this old man was talking about. "When he was dying 12 years ago, he said that we should cry over him as we're supposed to. He promised to come back if we stopped." The Romani man looked away from the headstone and looked at me. "He said if we miss a year, he'll crawl out of the grave, come to us, and tear us to pieces. He was a terrible sorcerer. One day, someone decided to cross him, and the next day, they buried that fool. His dog, who hadn't left his side for 5 years, tore his throat out." And the old man winced and looked toward the headstone. When they started questioning him about it, he just shrugged his hands and said, "God punished him for disrespecting his elders." And not a single person dared to say a word to him. Everyone was scared of him, terribly scared. He was ruthless. He didn't forgive anything. The old man's eyes glistened with tears. I had a beautiful boy with black eyes. He wanted to be his godfather, but I, the old fool. He looked toward the grave again. I didn't let him. I had a serious falling out with him. He got pneumonia. He didn't even live a year. The old man's fists involuntarily clenched. And every year I go to this. It seemed like he was about to burst into tears. I go to this memorial and cry over him. I live the farthest away from here. I wait until everyone leaves. I want to stand up straight and spit on his grave and curse the sorcerer so he won't have peace in this world or the next. But I don't have the guts. I think he lied about coming back after death, but who knows? But that's okay. I'm old. I'll stop being afraid soon. The old man didn't know where to look. He shook his head from side to side, whispered something, and breathed heavily. He calmed down with great difficulty. He looked at me. Happy now that you've seen someone else's grief? Go, please leave me alone. Don't come back here. This is a bad place. Young people have no business being here. Stunned and dejected, I couldn't move. I needed to say something, maybe comfort him. And then I remembered Yakovlev. He loved stories like this. Maybe I should call him and tell him about the crazy old Romani man. I had completely forgotten about the arrangement I had made with Sasha. Without saying goodbye, I left the old man alone at the grave and returned to the Kislitskys' house. As I entered the gate, I looked at Matilda warily, remembering the old man's words about the dog that tore out its owner's throat. But Matilda barked happily and, wagging her tail in a friendly way, began to rub against me. I patted her for a bit, sat outside to collect my thoughts, and decided to call Yakovlev. His niece, Sasha, who had been living with the professor since her parents died, answered the phone. "Hi, Sasha, it's Slavic," I said, introducing myself. "What Slavic?" "Slavic Sherbakov. I met you and the professor on a train a little over a month ago." Her voice changed immediately. It became icy. "What do you want?" "I'd like to talk to Stanislav Nikolaevich. He's not here. He left for a conference in Washington, D.C. Do you know how I can reach him? I thought we had an arrangement." Sasha flared up. "What did you promise me about Tarasov? Leave my uncle alone." I was a little flustered. I hadn't expected such a reaction from her. "Okay, I'm sorry, I guess," I mumbled and hung up the phone. After all, there was no hurry. The cemetery wasn't going anywhere. I'd call when Yakovlev got back. After I made that decision, I made myself dinner and went to bed. In the middle of the night, I was woken up by the sound of a dog barking. I pried my eyes open, turned on the light, and looked at the clock, 2 after midnight. What was going on out there? Completely forgetting about the cemetery, the old Romani man, and his story, I put on my pants and t-shirt. I went outside. Someone was knocking on the gate. "Hey, it's the police. Open up." Sleep was gone in an instant. Wondering if I was in trouble, if the police found out the owners weren't home and some unknown person was there instead, I ran outside. Matilda quieted down immediately. "Who's there?" I yelled just in case. "Police, open up." They responded from the other side of the fence. Trying to collect my thoughts, I opened the gate and looked out. 2 tall police officers were standing there. "Captain Igorov." One of them introduced himself. "Are you Igor Kislitsky? The owners aren't home. I'm a friend of the son, Vadim. They asked me to look after the house while they're gone." "What's your name?" the captain asked. "Vyacheslav Sherbakov." The captain looked meaningfully at his partner, then back at me. "Hear anything tonight?" "No," I said confidently. "What happened? Do you have any documents on you? To confirm your identity?" "They're all at home," I said in a weak voice. "I've only been staying at Vadik's for a day. Now they're going to take me to the station and hold me all night." "You didn't hear anything?" "I was sleeping." My voice sounded defensive. It was unpleasant to admit it, but in the presence of the police, I felt timid. Okay, go back to sleep, but listen, don't leave. We might have to question you, the captain said. What happened? Nothing, go to sleep, Igorov said. There's nothing more to see here. Let's go, he said to his partner. I watched them go, went back into the house, and tried to fall asleep. No way. Seriously worried, I barely managed to wait for morning. I ran outside. A crowd of onlookers had gathered near the neighboring house. There were ambulances and police cars. I stood nearby and started to listen to the conversations. It soon became clear that some Romani man had been killed. No one knew the details. But when it turned out that the victim was an old man, I retreated. If my guess was right, and the man who was killed was the same Romani man I had talked to, I was in a lot of trouble. I spent the next day practically holed up in the house. Fortunately, the police didn't bother me again. Soon, news of the murder spread. People started calling me. The first was my mom. She was panicking and demanding that I come home. I calmed her down and told her I wasn't in any danger. Then the Kislitskys called. Vadim's father said they would return as soon as they could. The third call was from Yakovlev, which surprised me. Hi, Slava. Your mom gave me this number. I heard that a Romani man was killed in your area. I knew him casually. Could you go and find out what's what? I'm already there, Stanislav Nikolaevich. I had to retell the professor the story of my misfortunes. He became more animated. Listen, Sasha is going to come to you right now. You'll take her to that cemetery and show her everything. Deal? I don't think she'll be thrilled about that idea. Don't pay any attention to her. Who knows why she doesn't like you? Just wait for her. Our conversation ended there. Sasha did arrive an hour later, parking her car in front of the Kislitskys' house. She made a sour face, took out her camera, and, without greeting me, said, "Let's go to your cemetery." We set off, crossed the road, entered the forest, and reached the ravine without saying a word the entire time. It was an amazing thing. I was never timid in the presence of girls. On the contrary, I tried to attract their attention, but with Sasha, it was different. I was afraid of saying something stupid, of making a fool of myself. She was not only beautiful but also older and smarter than me. We arrived at the cemetery without any incidents. I had a hard time finding the asphalt path the old Romani man had shown me. We had almost reached the grave when I noticed something was wrong. The path was covered in dirt, and the air smelled musty and like death. We approached the fence and froze. Clumps of dirt were scattered everywhere. The monument was leaning, and the slab was cracked. "Hey, get out of here right now!" A young police officer appeared out of nowhere. "There's nothing to see here." "Get lost." "We're from the newspaper," Sasha objected. "According to the Constitution, you have no right to obstruct the performance of a professional duty. You're the smart one, aren't you? Do you want me to arrest you for vandalism?" They started arguing, but I wasn't listening. I was looking at the headstone and thinking, did the old Romani man really do it?